You step out of your car after a 14-hour shift, and there it is again. That envelope under the door, rent's going up, $300 more a month. You do the math in your head, walking up the stairs, and you realize something cold. You've paid this landlord enough money over the last 6 years to buy a small house outright, and you own nothing. Not a single nail, not a square inch of dirt, and next month you'll pay him again. That's the trap. That's the quiet bleed almost nobody talks about because the people bleeding are too tired to notice. The average American renter now hands over more than $1.7 million across a working lifetime, according to numbers pulled from Zillow and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And at the end of it, they hand back the keys. Meanwhile, there's a small, stubborn group of people out there living in tiny homes they built for under $15,000 with zero monthly housing cost, zero mortgage, zero rent, and a deed in a fireproof box. Forever. And here's the part that should make you sit up. Most of what you've been told about why you can't do the same is wrong. Permits, land, off-grid power, water, sewage, legality, every one of those walls has a door, and almost nobody is showing you where the door is. So tonight, I'm going to walk you through it. The real numbers, the real builds, the real legal loopholes people are using right now in 2024 to live for $0 a month forever. And the mistakes that quietly bankrupt the ones who try this without knowing what they're doing. Stay with me because by the end of this, you're going to look at your next rent payment very differently. Let's start with the lie. The lie is that a home, a real, legal, livable home, has to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars or a 30-year leash to a bank. That lie is propped up by an entire industry. Builders, realtors, lenders, zoning boards, and yes, landlords. They all need you to believe that the only path is the long path, but the numbers don't agree with them. A properly built tiny home, on a foundation or on wheels, comes in between $8,000 and $40,000 depending on how much you do yourself. The median in the actual builder community, pulled from surveys on our tiny houses and the Tiny Home Industry Association, sits right around $23,000. That's it. That's the whole house, not the down payment, the whole thing. And if you go the salvage route, reclaimed lumber, secondhand windows, a donated trailer frame, people have done it under $7,000, fully documented with photos, receipts, and code inspections to prove it. There's a guy in Oregon, Rob Greenfield, who built a tiny house in Orlando for around $1,500 in materials and lived in it mortgage-free, rent-free, utility-free for years. That's not a story. That's a public, photographed, written about project you can pull up tonight. So the question isn't whether it's possible. It's done. The question is whether you understand the system well enough to do it without getting shut down, fined, or stuck with something you can't legally live in. And that's where almost everyone trips. Here's what they trip on. They build the house first, and they figure out the land later. That's backwards. That's the error that turns a beautiful little dream into a trailer parked behind somebody's cousin's barn for 3 years until the county finally notices. The high-low running through everything I'm about to tell you is this. The build is the easy part. The land and the legal status, that's the part that decides whether you live for $0 a month forever or whether you're back to renting in 18 months with less money than you started. So if you're already thinking, okay, but where would I even put it? Good, you're asking the right question first. Hold on to that thought because we're going to crack it wide open in a minute. And if this is the kind of breakdown you wish someone had given you years ago, the actual mechanics, not the Pinterest version, subscribe and stick with me because the next section is the one that catches most people completely off guard. And do me a favor while you're at it. Drop a comment and tell me, honestly, what's the number one thing stopping you from doing this? Land? Money? Your spouse thinks you've lost your mind? I read them. I want to know where you're stuck. All right? The land. This is where the $0 a month math actually lives or dies. Because a tiny home with no land under it is just an expensive shed. You need dirt. And dirt in most of America is not as expensive as people think if you know where to look and what to look for. Raw, rural land in states like Arkansas, West Virginia, Tennessee, parts of New Mexico, parts of Missouri, parts of Maine, regularly sells for between $500 and $3,000 an acre. Not per month, total. There are counties right now where you can buy 5 acres outright for under 10 grand. And I'm not talking about scams in the desert with no road access. I'm talking about wooded parcels with a county-maintained road, a recorded deed, and enough timber on them to build half the house from what's already standing. The catch, and this is where the high-low comes back, is zoning. Every county has its own rules about what you can put on that land and live in full-time. Some counties have what's called no zoning at all, meaning the land is essentially yours to build on within basic health and safety limits. Others have agricultural exemptions that let you live in any structure on parcels above a certain size, usually 5 or 10 acres. Others have specific tiny home ordinances now, because the movement got big enough that local governments had to write rules for it. Spur, Texas, was the first official tiny house friendly town in America. Walsenburg, Colorado opened up, Park County, Colorado, pockets of Sarasota County in Florida, pieces of rural Oregon. And the list is growing every year because rural counties are desperate for tax base, and tiny homeowners pay property tax just like anyone else. So the move, the actual move, the one almost nobody tells you in plain English is this: you pick the county first, not the house, not the design, the county. You read its zoning code, which is free online and usually about 40 pages. You confirm in writing what's allowed, then you buy the land, then you build. In that order, you win. Out of order, you lose. Now let's talk about the monthly nut, because saying $0 a month forever is a big claim, and I'm not going to throw it around without breaking it down. In a normal house, what does your monthly bill actually pay for? Mortgage or rent? Electric, gas, water, sewer, trash, internet, property tax, spread across the year, insurance. That's the stack. Now let's take it apart piece by piece on a paid-off tiny home on owned land. Mortgage gone because you paid cash for a $15,000 build in a $5,000 parcel. Rent gone forever. Electric, 400-watt solar setup with a small battery bank, runs about $1,200 one time and powers lights, a laptop, a small fridge, fans, and chargers indefinitely. Gas replaced with a small propane tank. You refill maybe twice a year for $40, or wood heat from a tiny stove burning what falls on your own land. Water, rainwater catchment off a metal roof, properly filtered, is legal in most states and gives you more water than one person uses, free falling out of the sky. In drier states, you drill a shallow well once for $2,000 to $5,000 and you're done for 30 years. Sewer, a properly permitted composting toilet, the kind the National Park Service uses in backcountry stations, runs about $1,000 and never connects to anything. Gray water from a sink goes through a simple gravel filter into a garden bed. Trash, you produce almost none because you have no room to accumulate junk, and what you do produce you haul once a month. Internet, Starlink, or a rural hotspot, and yes, that's a real monthly cost, usually around $80 if you want it, $0 if you don't. Property tax on a $5,000 parcel with a tiny structure on it, often under $200 a year, which works out to about $16 a month, and in some counties with homestead exemptions, far less. Insurance optional on a structure you own outright, on land you own outright, though smart people carry a small policy, so the honest number, fully transparent, is not literally $0 every single month. It's closer to $20 to $50 a month for taxes and small recurring costs, and $0 for housing itself, compared to $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 a month in rent. That's the difference between working for a landlord and working for yourself. That's the gap. That's what people mean when they say $0. And once you see it laid out like that, you can't unsee it. Look, if you've stayed with me this far, you're not the kind of person who's going to forget this video tomorrow. You're already running the numbers in your head. You're already thinking about which state, which county, which design. But there's a long road between watching a breakdown like this and actually pulling it off without making a $40,000 mistake. The specific counties with the friendliest codes, the exact zoning language to look for in writing before you buy a single acre, the build plans that pass inspection on the first try, the off-grid systems that actually work through a real winter, the legal structure to protect the land so nobody can take it from you, the mistakes that quietly ruin people in year 2 when the septic fails or the county changes the rules, all of that. Every step, the county lists, the material specs, the permit scripts, the off-grid sizing math, it's all laid out in the full blueprint I put together. Links in the description. If you're serious about this, that's where you go next. Now let me tell you the mistakes, because this is the part the cheerful YouTube videos skip, and it's the part that keeps people renting forever. Mistake number 1, Building on wheels when you needed a foundation, or building on a foundation when you needed wheels. Wheels keep you classified as an RV in most places, which means you can move it, but you also can't legally live in it full-time in a lot of jurisdictions. A foundation makes it a permanent structure, which usually requires a building permit, which usually requires meeting minimum square footage in some counties, and that's where people get caught. The fix is knowing your county's exact definition before you pour concrete or weld a frame. Mistake number 2, ignoring water. People obsess over the cute interior and forget that without a real water plan, you're hauling jugs from a gas station within 6 months, and the romance dies fast. Mistake number 3, underbuilding the insulation. A tiny home loses heat fast. R value matters more in a small space than a big one, because the surface to volume ratio is brutal. People in cold states have woken up to frozen pipes and frozen toes because they cheaped out on insulation. Don't. Mistake number 4, and this is the big one, the one that breaks the $0 dream, buying land without an access easement in writing. If your driveway crosses someone else's property and the easement isn't recorded on the deed the day that neighbor sells, you can lose road access to your own land. It has happened. It happens every year. Get the easement in writing recorded with the county before money changes hands. Mistake number 5, trying to do it alone. Not the build you can do alone, the knowledge. People go in cold, learn through $40,000 of mistakes, and quit. The ones who make it almost always learned from someone who already did it. So where does this leave you? It leaves you with a choice that's actually a lot simpler than it looks from the outside. You can keep paying rent. That's a legitimate choice. A lot of people make it, and they have their reasons, but understand what you're choosing. You're choosing to send somebody else between $1,500 and $3,000 every single month for the rest of your working life in exchange for the right to sleep in a room you'll never own. Over 30 years, that's somewhere between $540,000 and $1.1 million gone with nothing on the other end. Or you can spend the next 6 to 12 months doing the homework, picking the county, walking the land, drawing the plan, learning the systems, and then spend somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000 one time on a structure and a piece of dirt that's yours forever. Not yours until the lease ends, not yours until the bank says so. Yours, with a deed in a box. And then you wake up on the first of the month and nothing comes out of your account because nothing is owed. That's what zero a month feels like. That's the thing the people doing it can't quite explain to anyone who hasn't felt it. It's not just cheaper. It's a different relationship with time. Your hours stop being something you trade for shelter. They become yours again. Here's the first practical step, the one I'd take this week if I were starting from scratch. Open a map. Pick 3 rural counties in 3 different states that interest you. Pull up each county's zoning code online. It's public. It's free. It's searchable. Search the words tiny home, minimum dwelling size, agricultural exemption, and manufactured structure. Read what comes up. Just read. Don't buy anything. Don't tell anyone. Just learn what the law actually says in 3 places, in writing, with your own eyes. By the end of one weekend, you'll know more about housing law than 95% of the people paying rent around you. From there, every other step gets easier because you're not guessing anymore. You're operating on real information. And one last warning, the one I want you to carry out of this video more than anything else: do not, under any circumstances, buy land before you confirm in writing what you can put on it and live in. Not a phone call, not a conversation. In writing from the county with a date and a signature, that single piece of paper is the difference between a home and a very expensive lesson. Drop me a comment and tell me which state you're eyeing first. I'm reading. And if you want me to break down a specific county next, the exact codes, the exact loopholes, the exact land prices, tell me which one, and that's the next video.